Hey, what's up, cats and kittens? And shout out to all my cerebral lights. It is she, the Cerebral Diva, and she is back and officially in the building with a brand new video of everyone's favorite. That's reality, and that's TEA because I give it to you scalding hot. So grab your cups, grab your saucers, gather around, and let's all partake in this libation of Real Housewives of Atlanta tea. Okay, people, season 12, episode 3 or 4, I do not recall. Blame it on my head and not my heart. I have other things that are occupying my thoughts. So, anyhow, before we start off talking about this episode, let's talk about this season collectively. For me, and I don't know if it's just me, I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say. It's been a really slow-moving season for me thus far. Really sort of melancholy. It's just been really heavy, just really somber. So, I mean, it's really cool to sort of get the insight and the backstory on some of the things that we've seen play out over the vlogs over the last couple of months. But it's just like, okay, I need this to... I need something more than what I've been given over the last 3 episodes, because it's like going to a funeral every week. Like, I can't do this. Like, this is ruining my chi. It's changing my energy. Like, I need something. I mean, I'm okay with a little fight. I'm okay with a little therapy. But for me, watching Real Housewives of Atlanta is escapism. You go there to watch, to laugh at, you know, the relationships that they have, and it's hard to laugh and poke fun at, you know, someone's relationship falling apart. Having said that, so excuse me, we see Porsha and Dennis, or Porsha in particular, we see her trying to put back the pieces of her life after last week's therapy session with Dr. Sherry. We also find out that Porsha and Tanya have forged this relationship. I guess they're hanging out together in tandem as couples. Which was really interesting. Just didn't really picture the two of them being friends, but okay, who am I to judge? So Porsha goes over to Tanya's, and she's sort of confiding in her, talking to her about the therapy session, talking to her about Dennis's infidelity and what have you. And this is what I say about this. And judge me if you may. By all means, I certainly do my fair share of judging here on my platform. But I'm going to say this. If Porsha gets back with Dennis, she is a fool. She's a fool. I mean, any man who would cheat on you while you're pregnant, you know, while you're carrying his child, while you're very emotionally vulnerable, while the child is developing, I don't know, that speaks to the character. Now, the one thing I find interesting about both Porsha and Kenya is that I think they're both beautiful women aesthetically. But, and this is more so for me, Kenya now than Porsha, because I see Porsha blossoming and blooming into a full-blown woman. But there's something about their personalities that I could see would be off-putting to a man. Again, I'm speaking more to Kenya than Porsha. So, let's move on from Porsha and let's talk about Kenya, because this to me was probably one of the most interesting parts of the episode. So, of course, we know that Kenya's husband, Marc, has been MIA, hasn't been around very much. And we finally see him, you know, do a pop-up where he comes to see Kenya and baby Brooklyn. Brooklyn is so adorable, by the way, and so is PJ. So we see Marc show up in Atlanta to spend time with his family. But what you see is the dynamic between Kenya and Marc. And it was, again, it was very uncomfortable for me to watch. I'm almost of the mindset that some things just don't need to be on film. And when I watched last night's episode and I saw the dynamic between Kenya and Marc, have you ever been around like one of your friends or one of your family members and they're arguing with their significant other and you're like the third wheel and you're there and you're trying to wait for a proper time to exit? You know, because you don't want to be privy to the information that they're sharing just because it's making you uncomfortable. That's kind of how last night's episode felt for me. When I was watching the dynamic between Kenya and Marc, I was just like, this is making her, well, it's making both of them look bad, right? It's making him look bad and it's making Kenya look desperate. Yep, I said it. It makes her look desperate, in my opinion. Now, given Kenya's history, you know, we've seen the relationship that she has with her mother. We saw the relationship that we had with Walter. We saw the relationship that we had with what's the crazy personal trainer guy? I can't think of his name. Anyhow, we've seen her jump into these instant add water and stir relationships. So Kenya has a tendency to align herself with men who are emotionally unavailable or either emotionally toxic. That is sort of her MO. And we've seen that play out over and over and over. And I think a large part of why she does that is that Kenya, for as beautiful as she is constantly seeking validation through her relationships. And when you watch last night's episode and you see the interactions between she and Marc, you realize that the picture perfect image that she's putting out there for the world, or that she was putting out there for the world, you realize that it's anything but. I didn't see any love. I didn't see this man having any love for Kenya. He definitely adores his daughter. I mean, you could see, adulation to the nth degree as it related to his daughter. Like, he is fawning over baby Brooklyn. And at one point, she's trying to cook breakfast for the three of them, right? So, and you can see her scrambling, no pun intended, looking for eggs, trying to put the piecemeal of breakfast for this man, because she knows if she doesn't come up with something, he's going to criticize her. And being a beauty queen and, having to always be perfect, criticism isn't something that Kenya, well, most of us, to be completely honest, aren't fond of being criticized. But I think it's a little bit more impactful when you come from a world where you have to be perfect, or when you're thought to be perfect. So Kenya is like going through her refrigerator. She's looking for eggs. She doesn't have any. Finally, it looks like she finds some turkey bacon and some pancake mix, and she sort of puts together a meal. And she's looking for his approval this entire time. And he's just sort of, not investing. And she's, talking about them going on a vacation and, wanting to spend quality time with him. And he is just like enamored with Brooklyn, not paying Kenya an iota of attention. He could care less that Kenya was even in the room. And it was like, wow, like, is he just really this much of an a-hole? And I'm going to give Marc the benefit of the doubt, right? Because the one thing that we know about these reality TV shows is that what we very often see is a very condensed version of the conversation as a whole. So if you sort of take snippets and piece them together, then you can create a narrative that makes this man look like he's very bad. And if you eliminate or cut out parts where Kenya is not being her best self, you can make her look like this doting wife who is, fawning over her husband and trying to be this ideal mom. So I'm not quite sure how much of that was Marc's personality and how much of that was potentially editing. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And again, I'm not sure how much of Marc's disinterest in Kenya is directly correlated to Kenya being Kenya. When you watch her personality, as much as I like Kenya, and I'm a Kenya fan, but listen, I'm an objective fan. Like, I'm not one of those people who is going to always side with the person that I like, because I don't think that's a healthy thing to do. I think that you have to take an objective view at the people that you like. So when you look at Kenya's personality, I couldn't tell if Marc was just disenchanted by Kenya, or if he was just simply worn out, like tired, exhausted with her shenanigans, exhausted with her neediness, exhausted with her constant desire for attention. He's like, I'm a businessman, I'm running a business, and so he has a lot of things on his plate. And so Kenya being emotionally indigent might just be something that's just like, maybe the reason that he got with Kenya is that he perceived her to be this boss lady who had businesses, and she was on TV, and she had all of these different things going on. And because she had all of these things going on, it meant that she would be less demanding of his time. But then when he got with Kenya, he found out that it was the opposite, that she's, even in spite of having all of those things going on, she still wanted more of his time. And now that he's in this relationship with her and he sees how needy she is and how much of a Klingon she is, maybe for him that's a little bit off-putting. So at one point, Kenya, she piecemeals this breakfast of pancakes and turkey bacon, it looks like, together. And she serves him, and, she's waiting for him to take a bite and give his approval. And of course, he cannot give his approval without some sort of air of sarcasm. So he, sort of gags as he's eating the pancakes, and Kenya laughs it off. But you can tell secretly she wanted him to really, really appreciate what she'd done for him. I'm not sure how much appreciation you give for ready mixed pancakes. Anyhow, so as they're sitting there enjoying the breakfast, they're talking about this vacation. And Kenya wants it to be a couple's vacation. She wants Brooklyn to, I don't know if she wants Brooklyn to go and have a nanny with them, or she wants Brooklyn to be watched over by maybe one of her family members or one of Marc's family members. But ultimately, she wants to have a vacation that's just solely the two of them. And Marc is like, not my baby. Wherever I go, she goes. And we find out also that Marc doesn't even like to sleep with Kenya unless Brooklyn is in the bed. Almost like he's putting a buffer between the two of them, because he's trying to find a way to reduce the opportunity for intimacy. So he wants Brooklyn to go on vacation, and at one point Kenya asks, he said something about his main girl, and Kenya says, well, am I your number one girl? Basically comparing herself to her daughter. Now I know some people may hear that and say, oh my God, how can you be that insecure to compare yourself to your daughter? I get what she was trying to say. I don't necessarily think that she said it the right way. I mean, here's the thing, right? When you're married and you're in a relationship, do your kids come first? Absolutely. But you're married to your spouse, so that really is the most important relationship that you have. But I think it makes Kenya look bad when you're comparing yourself to a helpless child. Like, wait until she's 15 or 16 when she can actually, do some things for herself. But right now, this child doesn't just need Marc, she needs both of you. And you comparing yourself to a helpless baby, just, I don't know, it wasn't the best look in my opinion, even though I understood to a degree what she was trying to communicate, in terms of who's the priority. I think there is a pecking order in relationships. When you do get married, I think your husband or your spouse or your significant other should always be the most important. And your child is a very close second. But that's just the way that I personally feel. But I also don't think that you should ever compare yourself to a baby, to an infant, to a toddler. I mean, that just to me was just, I don't know, it was in poor taste. So moving on from that, anyway, really quick before we move on from that, same advice I gave to Porsha, I'm going to give to Kenya. Listen, move on. You got the baby. You didn't get 100% of what you wanted. You got 50%. You didn't get the husband and the baby and the happily ever after. But you have a child. Listen, you are still beautiful. There are still some good years left ahead of you. Do not continue investing time and energy into this man who clearly does not want you. He doesn't want you. And that's advice I would give to any woman. There was a book, I can't remember when it came out, but there's this old school book called He's Just Not That Into You. And Kenya, Porsha, sis, he's just not that into you. Walk away, move on. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't keep spinning your wheels in the same place, dealing with these men who are never going to be the men that you want them to be. And I feel like once a relationship is contaminated, especially Porsha's relationship, Kenya's relationship with Marc, can a leopard change his spots? Can he be better? I don't know. He's just innately cruel to me based on what I've seen. He's just very sarcastic and snarky. I mean, if you're into being belittled and berated on a daily basis, then maybe Marc is your guy. But if you have an ounce of self-esteem, an ounce of self-worth, and you want to be talked to and respected as a woman, Marc is not the guy that you want to be with. And you have to stop trying to finesse these situations and sort of lull people into being the people that you are. Sometimes you have to take a step back, look at the person that you're dealing with, and ask yourself, if who he is who he will be, can I continue to be with this person? Marc is not someone personally I could see myself with, because it would be a war of words. Having someone talk to me the way that Marc talked, it probably would have been pancake mix all over the kitchen. Like, A, you will not talk to me that way. B, you will certainly not talk to me that way while cameras are rolling and have the entire world see you treat me as if, I'm the scum of the earth. That just couldn't happen for me. I might be willing to turn the other cheek if this wasn't being filmed. And I know that probably sounds bad, that appearances matter to me, but and it's not even the sake necessarily of for me. I think that if other young girls are watching you, other women who are in your position are watching you, it is incumbent upon you to stand. If you don't stand up for yourself, stand up for other women. You know what I mean? So let's move on from that. So anyhow, the girls are on a trip to New York City. We see Nene getting ready. We see Cynthia and Noelle. They're both on their way. Noelle came out last week. They're both on their way to the Pride Float in New York City. Marlo's on her way. Eva's on her way. And right before the festivities, Nene does an interview and she basically starts talking about Cynthia and how Cynthia has this side and Cynthia's not the goody two shoes that we believe her to be and what have you. And Cynthia gets a hold of the interview and shares it with Eva. And then they both sort of have this banter about how Nene's, not this person that she pretends to be. And how many times have we seen? I don't even know that I want to talk about this at this point. I mean, it's stupid in my personal opinion. They both show up on the float, and this is pretty much where the episode ends. They both show up on the float. We see Nene and Cynthia on the stairs of the float. Cynthia is leaning over speaking to Andy, I believe, or someone on the float, and Nene is going up the float, and they both turn and their eyes lock on each other. And that's where the episode ends. Again, Cynthia, leave Nene alone. Move on with your life. I mean, unless you are ready to kowtow and capitulate to Nene's every whim, I don't know. It's just never going to work. Ever, 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 ever. Like, Nene needs friends who don't have a backbone. Nene needs friends who need her so that when they need her, if a situation could ever arise, she can throw it back in their face that they needed her and put them back in position of subjugation, for lack of a better term. So, Cynthia, just move on from Nene. Nene is a friend. Nene is not a friend. Nene is an associate, in my opinion. So, anyhow, they didn't have a full-blown confrontation. Of course, that was sort of the teaser for next week's episode. We get to see what happens on the float. Again, a pretty ho-hum episode for me. I'm really curious to know what you guys think. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Todd and Kandi had a little bit of an exchange about her not being available for or not being participatory in the surrogate's life, which I thought was a little interesting because, again, they're kind of having a lesser version of the Marc Daly King situation. Todd can be a little snarky, but the thing I love about Kandi is Kandi speaks up for herself. So she was putting him in his place, and that's why that particular conversation doesn't stand out a whole lot for me, because Kandi definitely doesn't, she's not in the business of playing a Persian rug for Todd. Yeah, I think that's about it, you guys. Happy Monday. I'm getting ready for work. I hope you guys had an amazing weekend. As always, in closing, people, like, comment, subscribe, share if you care. And yeah, remember to live better, love harder, and think smarter. It is me, the Cerebral Diva, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Have a great Monday.